For 30 years, I lived under a name that wasn't truly mine, chasing approval from a father who denied my existence and a family tangled in secrets and betrayal. But when a DNA test shattered everything I thought I knew, I was forced to confront a truth far more complicated than blood. What if family isn't who you're born to, but who finally sees you for who you are? This is the story of reclaiming identity, justice, and a legacy I chose to build on my terms. Eliza sat at her sleek glass desk in the corner office overlooking the bustling streets of Manhattan. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over her carefully organized workspace. A laptop, a small stack of well-thumbed financial reports, and a framed photo of her mother on a happier day. She exhaled deeply, trying to quiet the turmoil inside her. Just days ago, her life had been turned upside down. The neat compartments of her identity, daughter, professional, achiever, had suddenly blurred. It had started innocently enough. A forgotten box tucked away in her mother's attic during a rare visit, a stack of old letters revealing a secret that had eluded her for 3 decades. The letter was from a man named Thomas Keller. He wasn't the man she had always known as Dad. Instead, he was her biological father, a man she had never met and whose existence was never acknowledged by the Matthews family. The revelation sent her reeling. Questions that had lingered in the shadows suddenly demanded answers. Why had her mother kept this from her? Why had Richard Matthews, the man who raised her, never spoken of Thomas? And most crushingly, what did this mean for Eliza's sense of self? For weeks, Eliza wrestled with these questions in the quiet moments between board meetings and client calls. Her job as a financial analyst required laser focus and sharp decision-making, yet her mind constantly drifted back to that letter, to the man named Thomas Keller. She had spent nights researching, piecing together public records, social media, breadcrumbs, and a growing suspicion that her life was a carefully constructed narrative, one she was now invited to rewrite. Her relationship with Richard Matthews had always been complicated. On the surface, he was the quintessential patriarch, successful, commanding, and seemingly proud. But beneath the polished exterior lurked a coldness that no amount of familial duty could thaw. Richard's approval was conditional, tied to performance and appearances. Eliza had always chased that approval tirelessly, yet it felt like chasing shadows. One evening, after a particularly draining day at work, Eliza composed an email to Thomas Keller. Her fingers hovered nervously over the keyboard before she pressed send. The message was simple, cautious. Dear Mr. Keller, my name is Eliza Matthews. I recently discovered that you are my biological father. I realize this must come as a shock, but I felt you should know. I would like to connect when you are ready. Sincerely, Eliza. The weight of that email settled heavily on her chest. She wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. What if he rejected her? What if this secret, once unveiled, destroyed the fragile balance she had with her family? To her surprise, Thomas responded within days. His email was measured but warm, tinged with disbelief and a tentative hope. Dear Eliza, thank you for reaching out. I was unaware of your existence until recently. This is a lot to process, but I would like to get to know you when I am ready. I see from your email signature that you work in finance in New York. I will be in Manhattan next month for a conference. Perhaps we can meet for coffee? Best, Thomas. That simple message, free of judgment or accusation, was a balm on her raw emotions. For the first time, Eliza felt the possibility of a connection based on truth rather than silence. Despite the emotional upheaval, the world outside continued with its unrelenting pace. Midweek, Eliza's phone buzzed with a call from her boss, demanding her attention on a client presentation. The client, Richardson & Cowers, a high-profile investment firm, specifically requested Eliza to present her risk assessment model in person. The recognition was unexpected but welcomed. Eliza realized her professional reputation was growing, independent of her family's name, a truth she had long suspected but rarely allowed herself to embrace. This acknowledgement ignited a quiet pride. She was more than a daughter trapped in family drama. She was a skilled professional, respected and valued on her own merits. Days later, the cold reality of her fractured family struck again. Richard Matthews sent a formal letter through his attorney. The tone was icy and legalistic, demanding the return of the Mercedes Eliza had purchased as a misguided attempt to buy his approval. The letter threatened legal action over public statements Eliza had made questioning her paternity, statements Richard deemed defamatory. The contrast between Thomas's tentative warmth and Richard's calculated hostility crystallized a painful truth. Blood ties were irrelevant if devoid of character and kindness. Through the emotional storm, Sophia, Eliza's half-sister, became a lifeline. Unlike Richard, Sophia reached out daily, her voice a mix of regret and empathy. "He's been controlling our lives," Sophia said during one late-night call, "making us compete for approval that was never equally available. I always saw how it hurt you. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you more." Sophia's words unlocked a floodgate of feelings Eliza hadn't known she was carrying. The loneliness, the rivalry, the desperation for acceptance. Half a year later, Eliza found herself changed in ways both subtle and profound. Therapy sessions helped her unravel years of conditional love and anxiety, allowing her to celebrate achievements as her own, not mere tokens for approval. Her relationship with her mother evolved too. No longer constrained by the pretenses of perfection, their conversations grew honest and raw, touching on the sacrifices and choices that had shaped their fractured family. The meeting with Thomas Keller was cautious but hopeful. At a quiet restaurant near Central Park, they discovered shared traits: analytical minds, a passion for market trends, and a curiosity about the life they might build together. Thanksgiving arrived with its quiet victory. Eliza accepted Sophia's invitation to dinner, choosing authentic connection over the staged family event at the Matthews estate. Richard declined to attend, his absence a silent acknowledgement of the irreparable distance between them. The evening was filled with warmth, Sophia's children laughing, the scent of homemade pie, and the comfort of shared stories. After dinner, a call from her mother shattered years of emotional silence. "I'm proud of you, Eliza," her mother said, her voice steady and sincere. "Not for your career or status, but for who you are. Resilient, truthful, strong. I should have said this long ago." The words healed wounds long thought permanent. Eliza understood that family was not a matter of blood alone, but of those who saw her clearly and loved her anyway. The Mercedes was sold, the money reinvested in Eliza's future rather than squandered in a futile search for approval. More importantly, she reclaimed her emotional energy, redirecting it toward relationships that nourished rather than drained. She no longer measured her worth by paternal validation, but by internal fulfillment and authentic connection. On quiet mornings, Eliza awoke, free from the familiar pangs of worthiness doubt. Her accomplishments were no longer trophies to earn love, but celebrations of her growth. The mystery of her paternity, once all-consuming, had lost its power. The true discovery was that family transcended DNA. It was the people who chose to love and honor the authentic self. Eliza's life had settled into an uneasy peace after the revelations about her biological father. But beneath the surface, old wounds and hidden truths began to resurface, threatening to dismantle the fragile stability she had fought so hard to build. The past was not done with her, and neither were the consequences of secrets kept for decades. It was a crisp autumn morning when the mail arrived with an unexpected weight. Among the usual bills and marketing flyers was a thick, cream-colored envelope, sealed with an unfamiliar emblem. Eliza's name was elegantly scripted on the front in dark ink. Her pulse quickened. Inside was a letter from the law firm representing her late grandfather's estate, Richard Matthews's father, Henry Matthews. The letter detailed the discovery of a codicil in the will, a legal addendum Eliza had never heard of, that named her the sole beneficiary of a considerable portion of Henry's estate. Eliza read and reread the letter, disbelief battling with a surge of hope. This inheritance wasn't just about money. It was a key to a family legacy that Richard Matthews had kept hidden, possibly to prevent her from claiming it. Determined to understand the full scope, Eliza enlisted the help of Daniel Graves, a seasoned estate lawyer she had met through a professional connection. Daniel's calm, analytical mind was a welcome balance to Eliza's emotional whirlwind. As they pored through the documents, Eliza uncovered a web of deceit stretching back decades. Her grandfather, Henry, had respected and loved her in secret, But Richard had systematically erased her from the family narrative, manipulating wills and records to exclude her. "Your worth is not defined by their acceptance," Mara reminded her. "You are enough just as you are." Unexpectedly, Claire Donovan's investigative work uncovered a whistleblower within Matthews Industries, a senior executive disillusioned by the company's corruption and eager to expose it. The whistleblower's testimony provided concrete evidence that could shift the tide of the legal battle. But working with a source so deeply embedded in the enemy's camp came with risks. Eliza and her team debated the best way to protect the whistleblower while maximizing the impact of their revelations. The culmination came at a press conference, organized by Claire, with Eliza standing at the forefront. Facing a room full of journalists, community leaders, and shareholders, Eliza shared the whistleblower's evidence and detailed the efforts to reform Matthews Industries from within. Her words were a call to action, not just for justice, but for accountability and change. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Public opinion began shifting, and pressure mounted on the Matthews board to enact reforms. But the victory was bittersweet. Richard retaliated with legal maneuvers aimed at silencing Eliza and Claire. Personal attacks sought to undermine Eliza's credibility and paint her as a reckless outsider. The toll was heavy: strained relationships, sleepless nights, and moments of doubt. Yet Eliza's resolve only deepened. She knew the path forward would be long and arduous, but she was no longer walking it alone. The press conference had sent shockwaves through the city and the business world. News outlets dissected every detail of Eliza's exposé on Matthews Industries. Yet, as much as the public cheered the revelation, the fallout for Eliza was immediate and brutal. Emails flooded her inbox, some full of support, others venomous threats. Headlines questioned her motives, painting her alternately as a hero or a vengeful daughter. The Matthews loyalists within the company doubled down, branding her a disruptive force, an outsider who didn't understand the family legacy. Eliza's phone buzzed constantly, a lifeline and a burden. Each call or message pulled her deeper, into a vortex of legal battles, media appearances, and personal turmoil. At night, exhaustion weighed heavily on her shoulders. She longed for simple moments of peace, a walk through the park, a quiet dinner. But those days seemed distant. Behind closed doors, the Matthews boardroom was a battlefield. Richard Matthews, once untouchable, now found his authority challenged. His allies whispered about Eliza's challenge as a reckless act that could bring the entire company to its knees. Eliza, backed by new allies on the board and the whistleblower's explosive evidence, demanded a formal investigation. The tension was palpable as the board convened, the air thick with accusation and denial. Richard's voice, once commanding, faltered under the scrutiny. But he was no fool. He counterattacked with his legal maneuvers, buying time and muddying the waters. Eliza's team, however, was relentless. The investigation uncovered more layers of deception: offshore accounts, manipulated environmental reports, and pressure on regulators to look the other way. Every document, every testimony, brought the Matthews empire closer to unraveling. Eliza's personal life suffered under the strain. Friends distanced themselves, unwilling to take sides in a family war so public and messy. Social invitations ceased, and even her closest relationships felt the pressure. Sophia became her anchor, visiting, often despite the public spotlight. Their renewed sisterhood was one of the few bright spots in a dark time. But Eliza's heart ached for Thomas, whose cautious optimism sometimes clashed with the harsh realities she faced. Their relationship, once a refuge, became a source of tension as Eliza grappled with trust and vulnerability. One rainy evening, Thomas confronted her. "Eliza, I want to stand by you, but I'm not sure how to fight this battle." Eliza, exhausted but fierce, replied, "It's not just my fight anymore. It's about truth, justice, and who we want to be." Their fragile love endured, strengthened by honesty but tested by the storm. The whistleblower, codenamed Echo, continued to provide vital information. Each leak exposed new scandals, forcing Matthews Industries to implement damage control and PR campaigns that grew increasingly desperate. Meanwhile, Claire Donovan's investigative series gained national attention, shining a light on corporate malfeasance and environmental injustice. Eliza also reached out to environmental groups and activists affected by Matthews Industries' negligence. Their testimonies added weight to the growing public outrage. Together, a coalition of voices demanded accountability, transparency, and reform. The Matthews family was fracturing. James Matthews, caught between loyalty to his brother and conscience, faced increasing isolation within the family and the boardroom. His alliance with Eliza was tenuous, built on fragile trust and mutual necessity. Richard Matthews retaliated by isolating James, threatening to cut him out of the family fortune and business if he didn't cease collaboration with Eliza. Sophia's position grew precarious as well. Torn between her father's empire and newfound truths, she struggled to find her place. One heated family meeting ended with Sophia storming out, declaring she wouldn't be part of a legacy built on lies. Eliza's legal team prepared for the inevitable lawsuits Richard Matthews would file. They braced for protracted court battles designed to drain resources and intimidate, but Eliza was resolute. Every document was meticulously reviewed, every witness coached. The goal was clear, not just to survive the fight, but to win justice for those wronged. Daniel, her trusted attorney, reminded her, "This is more than a family feud. It's about setting a precedent, about changing how corporations are held accountable." Eliza nodded. The path was daunting, but the stakes were higher than she imagined. Public opinion was a volatile battleground. Matthews Industries launched aggressive media campaigns, hiring PR firms to discredit Eliza and spin narratives about internal family disputes. Eliza responded with transparency and openness, giving interviews that highlighted facts, not drama. She refused to play their game of character assassination. Claire Donovan's reporting was instrumental in maintaining momentum. Her integrity and fearless journalism won respect from the public and peers alike. The media war was exhausting, but it kept the spotlight where it mattered. In stolen moments of solitude, Eliza reflected on how far she'd come. The daughter who once craved approval now stood unshackled by it. Her mother's words no longer echoed in her mind, replaced by a new narrative. One of strength, resilience, and purpose. Therapy sessions with Dr. Jensen deepened her healing, helping her confront not only the past, but the uncertainty of the future. Eliza journaled regularly, chronicling victories, setbacks, and lessons. The act of writing grounded her, providing clarity and perspective. The investigation culminated in a public report that stunned the business world. Matthews Industries was found guilty of multiple violations: financial fraud, environmental harm, and obstruction of justice. Regulators imposed heavy fines, and several top executives faced criminal charges. Richard Matthews' reputation was irreparably damaged. He resigned from the board amidst growing pressure. The company pledged reforms, but Eliza knew the battle, for true change was just beginning. With Richard's fall, Eliza stepped forward as a leader, not to claim power, but to steer the company toward integrity and responsibility. Her vision was clear: transparency, environmental stewardship, and community engagement. Sophia joined her side, bringing fresh energy and perspective. Together, they worked to rebuild trust within the company and the community. Thomas stood beside her, his unwavering support a reminder that even in the darkest times, love could endure. The Matthews empire was forever changed. The scars of betrayal would remain, but so would the seeds of redemption. Eliza's journey was a testament to courage and the power of truth. She looked to the future with cautious optimism, ready to face whatever challenges came next. For in the end, she was no longer a shadow of her family's past, but the author of her own story. The months following the public exposure of Matthews Industries' corruption were a whirlwind of change. The company was a shell of its former self, struggling to repair decades of damage to its reputation, to the environment, and to its people. Eliza Matthews, now a reluctant yet determined leader, navigated the complex transition with cautious optimism. The board, now majority independent members, looked to her for guidance. Yet many in the corporate world watched skeptically, some hoping she'd fail, but Eliza was not here to merely survive. She was here to redefine what Matthews Industries could be. Despite the external battles, the hardest fight was within the family. Sophia and Eliza's bond had grown stronger, forged in fire and tempered by shared pain. They met regularly, often with Thomas and James joining, seeking ways to mend fractured relationships. One evening, in the quiet of Eliza's modest apartment overlooking the city, the sisters sat together. "We can't change the past," Sophia said softly. "But maybe we can build something better. Together." Eliza nodded, feeling the weight of years of betrayal begin to lift. "I want us to be a family, not just in name, but in action." Their tentative truce was a beacon of hope, fragile but real. Though the investigation had dealt Matthews Industries a devastating blow, Richard Matthews wasn't finished. Using every legal maneuver at his disposal, he launched a series of lawsuits, alleging defamation, breach of fiduciary duty, and even conspiracy against Eliza and the board. Courtrooms became arenas of high drama, media frenzy, and exhausting. Strategy, Eliza's team, bolstered by new evidence and testimonies from former executives who had turned whistleblower, pushed back fiercely. During one pivotal hearing, Eliza herself took the stand. Her voice, steady and clear, recounted the years of deception, the environmental toll, and the personal cost. The judge's decision was swift and decisive, dismissing Richard's claims and ordering him to pay substantial damages. Justice, though slow, was finally served. In an unprecedented move, Richard Matthews agreed to a live televised interview, the first public appearance since his resignation. The nation watched as the once powerful patriarch, humbled and defeated, faced his reckoning. "I was blinded by ambition and fear," Richard confessed, his voice thick with regret. "I betrayed not only my family but the trust of every employee and community affected by my actions." Eliza watched from backstage, a swirl of emotions flooding her, relief, sadness, and a strange sense of closure. The apology was not a victory but a step toward healing for all involved. With the old guard dismantled, Eliza, Sophia, and James began the painstaking process of rebuilding the company from the ground up. They implemented rigorous environmental standards, launched community outreach programs, and fostered a culture of transparency and accountability. Employees, once wary, slowly embraced the new vision. One landmark project involved revitalizing a river polluted for decades by Matthews Industries factories, a symbolic and practical act of redemption. Eliza visited the site frequently, sometimes joined by community members whose lives had been affected. Together they planted trees, cleaned waterways, and told stories of resilience. As Matthews Industries transformed, so did Eliza. She continued therapy, working through scars that no public victory could erase. She learned to forgive herself, and eventually even her parents, not for their sake, but for her peace. Her relationship with Thomas deepened. They shared dreams beyond the company, of travel, quiet moments, and perhaps, one day, a family of their own. One spring morning, Thomas surprised her with tickets to Italy, a place Eliza had always dreamed of visiting but never had the chance. "It's time for new beginnings," he said, taking her hand. Eliza's story attracted attention beyond the corporate and environmental spheres. Universities invited her to speak on ethics, leadership, and resilience. Documentaries chronicled her journey, inspiring a new generation to stand against injustice. She established a foundation dedicated to supporting whistleblowers and environmental activists, turning her fight into a broader mission. The foundation's first major initiative was a scholarship fund for young women pursuing environmental science, a tribute to the sister she had become and the legacy she hoped to build. A year after the scandal broke, the Matthews family gathered for a private dinner, a tentative reunion full of unspoken words and cautious hope. Richard, now frail and reflective, attended alongside his estranged wife and the siblings. The evening was bittersweet, filled with apologies, stories, and a shared acknowledgement of the pain endured. Eliza stood to speak last. "I don't know what the future holds," she said. "But I do know that families, like companies, can rebuild if there's honesty, respect, and courage to face the truth." There were tears, nods, and even tentative smiles. It was not perfect, but it was a start. As Eliza looked out over the city skyline from her office window, she felt a quiet pride. Her journey had been defined not by her father's empire, but by her values, integrity, courage, and the will to fight for what is right. The path ahead was uncertain, but no longer lonely. In reclaiming her story, Eliza had become more than a Matthews. She had become a symbol of redemption, hope, and renewal.